I'm Jeremy. Today's day 315 of reading. Today, HarryPotter and the Goblet of Fire. Let's get started. We're currently on page 590. Let's go. Any more? Said Crouch. Yes, said Karkaroff. There was Travers. He helped murder the McKinnons. Mulciber, he specialized in the Imperious Curse, forced countless people to do horrific things. Rookwood, who was a spy, and passed he who must not be named useful information from inside the ministry itself. Harry could tell that, this time, Karkaroff had struck gold. The watching crowd was all murmuring together. Rookwood? Said Mr. Crouch, nodding to a witch sitting in front of him, who began scribbling upon her piece of parchment. Augustus Rookwood of the Department of Mysteries? The very same, said Karkaroff eagerly. I believe he used a network of well-placed wizards both inside and out to collect information. But Travers and Mulciber we have, said Mr. Crouch. Very well, Karkaroff. If that is all, you will be returned to Azkaban while we decide. Not yet, cried Karkaroff, looking quite desperate. I have more. He could see him sweating in the torchlight, his white skin contrasting strongly with the black of his hair and beard. Snape, he shouted. Severus Snape. Snape has been cleared by the council, said Crouch disdainfully. He has been vouched for by Albus Dumbledore. No, shouted Karkaroff, straining at the chains that bound him to the chair. I assure you, Severus Snape is a Death Eater. Dumbledore had gotten to his feet. I have given evidence already on this matter, he said calmly. Severus Snape was indeed a Death Eater. However, he rejoined our side before Lord Voldemort's downfall and turned spy for us, at great personal risk. He is now no more a Death Eater than I am. Harry turned to look at Mad-Eye Moody. He was wearing a deep skepticism behind Dumbledore's back. Very well, Karkaroff, said Crouch coldly. You have been of assistance. I shall review your case. You will be returned to Azkaban in the meantime. Crouch's voice faded. Harry looked around. The dungeon was dissolving as if it was made of smoke. Everything was fading. He could see only his own body. All else was swirling darkness. And then the dungeon returned. Harry was sitting in a different seat, still on the highest bench, but now to the left of Mr. Crouch. The atmosphere seemed quite different, relaxed, even cheerful. The witches and wizards all around the wall were talking to one another, almost as though they were at some sort of sporting event. Harry noticed a witch halfway up the rows of benches opposite. She had short blonde hair, was wearing magenta robes, and was sucking the end of an acid-green clue. It was unmistakably a younger Rita Skeeter. Harry looked around. Dumbledore was sitting beside him again, wearing different robes. Mr. Crouch looked more tired, and somehow furious, gaunter. Harry understood. It was a different memory, a different day, a different trial. The door in the corner opened, and Ludo Bagman walked in the room. This was not, however, a Ludo Bagman gone to seed, but a Ludo Bagman who was clearly at the height of his Quidditch playing fitness. His nose wasn't broken now. He was tall and lean and muscular. Bagman looked nervous as he sat down in the chain chair, but it did not bind him there as it had bound Karkaroff, and Bagman, perhaps taking heart from this, glanced around at the watchful crowd, waved at a couple of them, and managed a small smile. You Ludo Bagman, you have brought here in front of the Council of Magical Law to answer charges related to the activities of Death Eaters, said Mr. Crouch. We have heard evidence against you and are about to reach our verdict. And do you have anything to add to your testimony before we pronounce judgment? Harry couldn't believe his ears. Ludo Bagman, a Death Eater? Only, said Bagman, smiling awkwardly. Well, I know I've been a bit of an idiot. One or two wizards and witches in the surrounding seats smiled indulgently. Mr. Crouch did not appear to share their feelings. He was staring down at Ludo Bagman with an expression of utmost severity and dislike. You never spoke a truer word, boy, someone muttered dryly to Dumbledore behind Harry. He looked around and saw Moody sitting there again. If I didn't know he'd always be dim, I'd say some of those bludgers had permanently affected his brain. Ludovic Bagman, you were caught passing information to Lord Voldemort's supporters, said Mr. Crouch. For this, I suggest a term of imprisonment in Azkaban lasting no less than... But there was an angry outcry from the surrounding benches. Several of the witches and wizards around the walls stood up, shaking their heads and even their fists at Mr. Crouch. But I told you, I had no idea, Bagman called earnestly over the crowd's babble, his round blue eyes widening. Not at all. Old Rookwood was a friend of my dad's. Never crossed my mind he was in with you-know-who. I thought I was collecting information for our side. And Rookwood kept talking about getting me a job in the ministry later on, once my Quidditch days are over. I can't keep getting hit by bludgers for the rest of my life, can I? There were titters from the crowd. It will be put to vote, said Crouch coldly. He turned to the right-hand side of the dungeon. The jury will please raise their hands. Those in favor of imprisonment. Harry looked toward the right-hand side of the dungeon. Not one person raised their hands. Many of the witches and wizards began to clap. One of the witches on the jury stood up. Yes, barked Crouch. We'd just like to congratulate Mr. Bagman on his splendid performance for England in Quidditch match against Turkey last Saturday, said the witch breathlessly. Mr. Crouch looked practically furious. The dungeon was ringing with applause now. Bagman got to his feet and bowed, beaming. Despicable, Mr. Crouch spat at Dumbledore, sitting down as Bagman walked out of the dungeon. Rook would get him a job indeed. The day Ludo Bagman joins us will be a sad day indeed for the ministry. And the dungeon dissolved again. When it returned, he looked around. He and Dumbledore were sitting beside Mr. Crouch. But the atmosphere could not have been more different. There was total silence, broken only by the dry sobs of a frail, wispy-looking witch in the seat next to Mr. Crouch. She was clutching a handkerchief to her mouth with trembling hands. Harry looked up at Mr. Crouch and saw he looked gaunter and grayer than ever before. A nerve was twitching in his temple. Bring them in, he said, and his voice echoed through the silent dungeon. The door in the corner opened yet again. 6 Dementors entered this time, flanking a group of 4 people. Harry saw the people in the crowd turn to look up at Mr. Crouch. A few of them whispered to one another. The Dementors placed each of the 4 people in the 4 chains with chained arms that now stood on the dungeon floor. There was a thick-set man who stared blankly up at Crouch, a thinner and more nervous-looking man, whose eyes were darting around the crowd, a woman with thick, shaggy dark hair and heavily hooded eyes, who was sitting in the chain chair as though it were a throne, and a boy in his late teens, who looked nothing short of petrified. He was shivering, his straw-colored hair all over his face, his freckled skin milk white. The wispy little witch beside Crouch began to rock backward and forward in her seat, whimpering into her handkerchief. Crouch stood up. He looked down upon the floor in front of him, and there was pure hatred in his face. You have been brought here before the Council of Magical Law, he said clearly, so that we may pass judgment on you for a crime so heinous. Father, said the boy with the straw-colored hair, Father, please, that we have rarely heard of the likes of it within this court, said Crouch, speaking more loudly, drowning out his son's voice. Thank you, everyone. That's all for today. Bye. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to read page 395. Bookmark. Close. Put away. Peace out.